From the very moment we enter this world, the test has already begun. No orientation session, no syllabus handed out, no warning about how hard the questions will be. You don't get to choose the exam hall you're placed in, the family you're born into, the body you're given, or the circumstances that surround your early years. Some people open their eyes into comfort, others into chaos. Some start with clarity, others with confusion. And yet, every single one of us is sitting for the same exam. Different questions, yes, but the same clock is ticking for all. That realization alone should change how we see life, because so often we waste energy comparing question papers. Why was theirs easier? Why do I have more obstacles? Why did they get resources I didn't? But comparison was never part of the test. Response is, you're not judged by what appeared on someone else's page. You're judged by how you answered the questions you were given. The test isn't about fairness in distribution. It's about faithfulness in response. And here's the part many people miss. The test is not optional. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't pause the timer. Whether you take life seriously or casually, whether you prepare or procrastinate, the exam continues. Days turn into years. Opportunities open and close. And answers are being written with every choice you make, consciously or unconsciously. Some people think the test begins when things get hard. No, the test begins when things are easy too. Ease tests gratitude, comfort tests discipline, success tests humility, difficulty tests patience, loss tests trust. Every season carries its own questions, and each one is revealing something about us, not to others but to ourselves. And understand this, the examiner already knows your potential. The test is not for information, it's for formation. It's not about exposing weakness, but about developing strength. You're not being watched to see if you fail. You're being guided to see who you become under pressure. That's why the most dangerous mindset is delay. I'll get serious later. I'll change when things calm down. I'll focus when life gives me space. But the test doesn't wait for ideal conditions. The questions are being asked now, in how you speak, in how you react, in what you prioritize, in what you run from, in what you hold onto. Once you accept that life itself is a test, urgency replaces apathy, purpose replaces drifting, responsibility replaces excuses. You stop asking, why me, and start asking, what is this teaching me? Because the moment you realize you are already sitting in the exam hall, you stop wasting time arguing with the paper, and you start writing answers that matter. This life is a test, and the clock is already running. When pressure enters our lives, our instinct is often to ask, why is this happening to me? But pressure doesn't arrive randomly, and it certainly doesn't arrive to destroy us. Pressure is part of the test. It is the moment when what has been quietly forming inside us is finally brought to the surface. You see, when life is calm, almost anyone can appear strong, patient, or faithful. But calm seasons don't reveal much. It's when the weight increases that the truth becomes visible. Think about it carefully. Pressure does not insert new qualities into a person. It simply exposes what was already there. When stress hits, it doesn't create fear. It reveals where fear was hiding. When hardship comes, it doesn't create impatience. It shows where patience was weak or strong. The exam is not written in the moments of ease. It is graded in the moments of strain. This is why preparation matters more than reaction. When pressure arrives, there is no time to suddenly become disciplined, grounded, or resilient. You don't rise to the occasion as much as you fall back on what you've been practicing all along. The habits you've built in private, the thoughts you've repeated when no one was watching, the values you've carried when it cost you nothing, those are what step forward when the pressure turns up. And this is also why two people can face the same difficulty and come out completely different. One becomes bitter, angry, and resentful. The other becomes deeper, calmer, and more grounded. The pressure was the same. The difference was preparation. One had invested internally long before the test moment arrived. The other had been relying on comfort to carry them through. Pressure is not a sign that something has gone wrong. Often, it's evidence that something important is happening. Growth requires resistance. Strength requires weight. Clarity often requires discomfort. If everything around you feels heavy, it may be because you are being strengthened, not punished. But here is the hard truth. Avoiding pressure does not protect you, it weakens you. When we constantly escape discomfort, we also escape development. We become skilled at coping, but not capable of carrying. Life eventually brings pressure, whether we invite it or not. The question is not whether it will come, the question is whether we will be ready when it does. This is why inner work matters. What you feed your mind, what you allow into your heart, how you train your reactions, all of it is preparation. Pressure is simply the moment when training becomes visible. It is the mirror that shows us who we really are when the noise fades and the stakes are real. So the next time pressure rises, resist the urge to panic or complain. Pause, observe. Ask yourself what this moment is revealing. Because pressure is not here to break you. It is here to show you what you've been building all along. Pressure reveals preparation, and the test is already in session. One of the greatest misunderstandings we carry through life is the idea that failure is the end of the road, that a wrong answer disqualifies us, that a mistake defines us. But that mindset alone causes more damage than the failure itself. Because in reality, failure is not a verdict, it is information. It is feedback from the test telling you where adjustment is needed. Every exam, whether academic or in life, is designed with the expectation that you will not get everything right the first time. Wrong answers are not evidence that you don't belong in the room. They are proof that you are still learning. Yet so many people treat failure as a personal humiliation rather than a personal lesson. They internalize it. They label themselves, and then they quit, not because they cannot continue, but because they are ashamed to try again. But look closely. Failure only becomes defeat when you refuse to review it, when you refuse to learn from it. When pride prevents correction and fear prevents re-entry. The test is merciful in this way. It allows you to continue as long as you are willing to reflect, recalibrate, and return with humility. Some of the most damaging mistakes we make are not the visible ones. They are the silent ones, the patterns we repeat without questioning, the habits we excuse instead of addressing, the same wrong answer written again and again, just in different handwriting. Failure keeps returning not to punish us, but to teach us what we keep avoiding. And here is something essential to understand. Growth does not happen by avoiding mistakes. It happens by responding correctly to them. Maturity is not the absence of error, it is the ability to extract wisdom from error. The strongest people are not those who never fall, but those who fall. Take note of where they slipped, and adjust their footing before standing again. This is why quitting is so dangerous. When you quit, you don't just stop the effort, you end the lesson. You walk away from the feedback that could have refined you. And life doesn't reward avoidance. It simply waits, and then reintroduces the same test in a different form. Different setting, same question. Failure then becomes a fork in the road. One path leads to bitterness, excuses, and stagnation. The other leads to clarity, resilience, and depth. The difference between the two is not intelligence or talent. It is humility. The willingness to say, I was wrong, and I can grow. And perhaps the most reassuring truth of all is this: you are not expected to be perfect to pass the test. You are expected to be sincere. You are expected to keep returning. you are expected to learn. The test is not measuring flawlessness, it is measuring perseverance. So don't fear the wrong answers. Fear only the moment you stop reviewing them. Because as long as you are willing to learn, adjust, and continue, failure is not the end. It is part of the curriculum. One of the most overlooked realities of this test we call life is that distractions are not accidental. They are not glitches in the system. They are built into the exam itself. If the test were only about intelligence or talent, focus wouldn't matter so much. But the test is deeper than that. It is testing whether you can remain anchored while everything around you tries to pull you away. Distraction doesn't always arrive as something obviously harmful. Sometimes it comes dressed as comfort, sometimes as entertainment, sometimes as endless noise, endless scrolling, endless opinions. Sometimes it comes as comparison, watching how others are living, achieving, progressing, until you lose sight of your own page entirely. You start answering questions that were never assigned to you. And the danger of distraction is not that it exhausts you immediately. It numbs you slowly. Days pass, then weeks, then years, and you look back wondering where your focus went, where your discipline went, where your clarity went. Nothing dramatic happened, no major collapse, just a gradual drifting away from intention. This is why focus is not just a productivity skill, it is a moral skill. What you give your attention to shapes who you become. Attention is limited. Every moment you spend consumed by noise is a moment you are not investing in growth. The test is not only asking what you can do, it is asking what you can ignore. And understand this clearly. The more meaningful your potential, the more aggressive the distractions will be. When something important is being formed, interruption increases. It's not coincidence, it's design. The test environment is intentionally loud. The challenge is whether you can hear your own purpose through the noise. Many people think discipline means doing more. Often it means doing less, but with intention, saying no, logging off, stepping back, protecting your mind from constant stimulation so it can actually think, reflect, and settle. Because a scattered mind cannot answer deep questions, and life's most important questions require clarity, not speed. This is why complaining about distractions misses the point. They are part of the evaluation. The test is asking, can you stay present? Can you stay grounded? Can you stay consistent when there is no applause and no urgency forcing you to focus? Can you work quietly while others are distracted loudly? Those who succeed in this test are not always the loudest or the busiest. They are the ones who learned how to lock in, who chose depth over noise, who understood that focus is not something you find, it is something you defend. Because in the end, life does not reward those who were entertained the most. It rewards those who were attentive, those who guarded their focus long enough to become someone capable of answering the hardest questions with clarity. Distractions are part of the test, but focus is how you pass. If there is one thing people consistently overestimate, it is motivation. We speak about it as though it is the engine of change, as though once you feel inspired enough, everything else will fall into place. But motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with mood, with energy, with circumstances. Some days it's there, other days it disappears completely. And the test of life is far too serious to depend on something so unstable. This is where discipline enters quietly, consistently, without drama. Discipline is not about intensity, it is about continuity. It is what carries you forward on the days when you don't feel inspired, when the results are slow, when no one is watching, and when quitting feels easier than continuing. Discipline is how you study for a test you cannot predict. Think about it, the hardest questions in life never announce themselves in advance. Loss doesn't send a warning, Pressure doesn't schedule itself. Temptation doesn't wait for permission. When those moments arrive, you don't have time to suddenly build character. You rely on what you have already trained. And that training happens in the ordinary, repetitive, uncelebrated moments of discipline. Discipline is choosing what benefits you long term over what satisfies you short term. It is regulating your actions even when your emotions argue otherwise. It is showing up consistently in your habits, your values, your responsibilities, even when the immediate payoff is invisible. This is why discipline feels heavy at first. It is an investment whose returns are delayed. Many people misunderstand discipline as restriction, as though it limits freedom. In reality, it creates freedom. It frees you from being controlled by impulse, by distraction, by regret. A disciplined life is not a narrow life. It is a directed one. It moves with purpose rather than reaction. And notice something important. Discipline does not demand perfection. It demands commitment. Missing a day does not destroy discipline. Abandoning the habit does. Discipline allows for human weakness, but it does not excuse surrender. You fall, you recalibrate, and you return. Again and again. This is why small habits matter more than dramatic changes. A few consistent actions repeated daily shape a person more than occasional bursts of effort. The test is not asking for moments of brilliance. It is asking for patterns of reliability. Who are you becoming when no one is applauding? Who are you training yourself to be before the pressure arrives? Because when life finally places a heavy question in front of you, discipline is what allows you to answer with stability instead of panic. It is the study guide you've been building quietly all along. Discipline prepares you for questions you haven't seen yet. As the test continues, there comes a moment when we have to ask an uncomfortable but necessary question. What exactly is being graded here? Because if we're honest, much of what people chase in life looks impressive on the surface, but carries very little weight in the final evaluation. Titles change, money moves, status rises and falls, applause fades faster than it arrives. None of these are stable measures of success, yet so many people live as though they are the final score. But this test was never about accumulation. It was about transformation. It was never about what you gathered, but about what you became while gathering it. Life is not tallying your possessions. It is shaping your person. The real outcome is internal. It shows up in who you are when no one is watching, when nothing is being recorded, when there is nothing to gain except integrity. Character is what remains when circumstances strip everything else away. When pressure exposes you, when failure humbles you, when distractions tempt you, when discipline exhausts you, what stays intact? That is the score. Not perfection, not popularity, not performance, but consistency of values across changing conditions. And this is why some people succeed outwardly yet feel hollow inwardly. They passed milestones but failed meaning. They reached goals but lost grounding. They answered questions quickly but never deeply. The test is not impressed by speed. It values sincerity. It values resilience. It values the ability to carry responsibility without being corrupted by it. The people who truly pass this test are not always the most visible. Often, they are the most dependable. The ones who show up when it's inconvenient. The ones who hold their principles when compromise would be easier. The ones who remain kind without becoming weak, strong without becoming arrogant, confident without becoming careless. Impact matters, but not the kind measured by noise. The kind measured by lives touched, trust built, and stability offered in moments of chaos. The test asks, did people feel safer because you were present? Did you leave things better than you found them? Did you grow in wisdom as your influence grew? And perhaps the most sobering truth is this: The final moments of this test will not ask how busy you were. They will not ask how admired you were. They will ask whether you were faithful with what you were given, whether you learned from your failures, whether pressure refined you, whether distractions defeated you, whether discipline shaped you, whether, through it all, you became someone capable of carrying more good into the world. This is why the test matters, not because life is harsh, but because life is meaningful, and meaning demands responsibility. In the end, the only grade that truly lasts is the person you leave behind. The final score is who you become,